Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Charles, and I welcome you guys to another episode of the Dreamerspro Show, where we cover everything from sports, hot topics, classic debates, entertainment, and where we give you guys a first perspective on things and how we see them. Today's episode, I got a pretty interesting one for you, and the topic is the real reason NBA players call Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan the GOAT. So that's the topic I'm going to get into in today's video. But before we get into that, I want you guys to please make sure you go ahead and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to be notified whenever we drop our content or whenever we're talking about the best player of all time in the NBA. It's always a contentious debate. It's always something that gets sports fans riled up. Everyone starts to get into their feelings. And when no matter how many, you can ask every single basketball fan, who's your top three, who's your top 4 or 5 players, and you're always going to get a different answer. But whenever you start to ask them who are the top 2, for example, right? Who are the top 2 players? And you're pretty much going to get a similar answer. And I think this is the reason why. I think the reason this thing is always a debate is because there seems to be a divide between players, NBA players, the fans, and the media. There's a divide there. Whenever you ask most media members, who's the greatest players of all time, most of them will say Jordan and LeBron. That's what most media members will say. When you ask most fans, who's the best player between, who's the two greatest players of all time? Most of them are going to say Jordan or LeBron. But whenever you ask NBA players, who's the greatest players of all time? Most of them usually say Jordan and Kobe. This is the reason. But the question is, why is that? Why is it that NBA players or basketball players always seem to go for Jordan and Kobe, whereas most fans and media members seem to go for Jordan and LeBron? What is the reason for that? And I think there's a very interesting reason and a legitimate argument that we can make here. I think that people, especially media members, people are driven by narratives and personal agendas. These people in the media, they're driven by narratives because they have to write stories and they have personal agendas. This is the reason. This is one of the reasons. I think players that they don't like, they won't give them as much praise as other players that they do like. If they like a certain player or they like certain players, they're certainly going to prop them up. They're going to speak glowingly about them and all of these different things. But if it's a player that they don't really like, they're not going to give them that benefit of the doubt. I think that's the reason that is. And I think most sports fans who listen to media members, their opinions tend to be shaped by what media members say, because these are the guys that are talking about basketball all day long, right? These are the guys that you see on TV, on YouTube, and all of these different places. They're the ones talking about basketball. They're the ones that are having these debates. They're the ones putting forth these arguments, and fans get to sit back and listen to these people go back and forth, and then they tend to get a lot of their talking points from them. This is the reason why whenever you hear the GOAT debate, you hear a lot of fans go around the internet parroting a lot of the argument points that a lot of these guys on the media have, right? This is the reason for that, because their opinions are shaped by what these people in the media seem to say. But whenever we talk about NBA players, I think is a completely different thing, right? I think it's a completely different thing. And I want to give you guys sort of a comparison to illustrate what I mean. Okay, for example, let's talk about artists. Right? I guess we can talk about comparing it. We can compare this thing to artists or like a painter, for example, right? A critique or a connoisseur of art can appreciate art up to a certain degree, right? They can appreciate probably the craftsmanship, the technique. They can appreciate, what went into that artist and all of these different things, right? Generally, this is how they can appreciate art, but there's always a limit. There's always a limit. They can't go beyond that, because as much as they can appreciate that art, as much as they can understand the different intricacies that went into that art, they can't create it, right? They can't create it. But another artist that's analyzing, an artist's work, they can analyze that work on a totally different level, because they know what it takes to create art. They're actually creating art. So they're not just observing it and critiquing it. They can observe it, they can critique it, but they understand what actually goes into creating that art. And for me, I think they're able to appreciate art on a much deeper level because they understand the process of creating art, right? They know They know the difference between a good artist and a great artist, because some of them understand, listen, this is as good as I am, but they can look at someone else and say, that guy or that girl is better than me because they have more technique, they have more skill, they have more talent. They can imagine things at a deeper level in a more robust way than I can. And this is something that a connoisseur critique just can't accomplish. They can't accomplish that, right? And I think that's the reason why you see most NBA players, when they ask them, who's the greatest players of all time, most of them say Jordan or Kobe, because they understand how hard it is to do what those guys do, because they do that very same thing. They do the exact same thing. NBA players can understand basketball. Basketball players can understand basketball at a much deeper level because they actually go out there and perform the thing that we're analyzing or critiquing. And it's a different thing to, as they say, walk the walk than to talk. To talk the talk than to walk the walk. It's a lot harder to do, and these guys understand it, right? Now, and I think that's the reason why, whenever you ask NBA players this question, they always say Kobe and these guys. And the funniest thing is this: NBA players are not driven by their egos or their agendas or particular agenda. And I'll tell you why. Because these are people that they actually have competed with, right? They have competed against Kobe. They've competed against LeBron. They've competed against Jordan. And even after competing against these guys, even knowing that these guys are probably the greatest ever, they still are willing to give it up to them and say, listen, although I've competed against these guys, right? But I respect just how good they are, whether or not they beat me or not. And that's a very, very, very interesting dichotomy that's taking place between NBA players when they're critiquing themselves. It's very, very interesting when you think about it, because you think of a guy like Jalen Rose, for example. Jalen Rose said, remember, Jalen Rose was part of that 81 piece that Kobe Bryant put up. But every time he talks about Kobe Bryant, he always gives him his props. Right? If it's a regular person, you say, why would you give somebody props that gave you buckets? Why would you do that? Because he respects what goes into the craft. He knows how hard it is, or how hard it was, in this case, for Kobe Bryant to accomplish that. So he understands it's not about my ego. It's about respecting the craft that both of them love. And he knows that even if he tried his best, he couldn't score 81 points in an NBA game, but he knew Kobe could. This is the reason why you listen to people like Kevin Durant when this is why NBA players put such a premium on skill. They give skill such a high premium because they know how hard it is to be skillful, right? They know how hard it is to be skillful. I was listening to Ron Artest on the Shannon Sharp podcast, and they were talking about, they asked the question, could Jordan average 50 in today's NBA? And he was like, he think he could. And Shannon Sharp was like, what? He's like, listen, with the rules that they have today, with the way that the game is played, the way that offenses are, given the fact that there are more possessions and all of this stuff, he goes, listen, James Harden tried to, outdo Michael Jordan's record of 37 points per game. He scored 36, and he was trying his best. He said, but if Jordan was playing today, he would average 50. Now, I don't know if he would average 50. He probably would average over 40 points without much difficulty. But even Ron Artest is a former NBA player, is a former Defensive Player of the Year, who played against Jordan, was like, he was that good. Like, you don't understand. Shannon Sharp is like, what? And Ron Artest is like, no. He could. That divide right there is the distance between a critique, a fan, and an NBA player. This is the reason why these guys always rank Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan as the GOATs. Now, in my personal opinion, even without even being an NBA player, I think it's clear to see that Jordan is the greatest, and I have Kobe Bryant number 3. I think the only person standing between these two players is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but that's just me. That's just me here. But I think it's quite interesting that so many NBA players always pick Kobe and Jordan, and then even basketball players who probably don't play at a professional level, who play maybe collegiately or play in different leagues or whatever it is, they always seem to pick these guys, and I think that's very interesting. You got to ask yourself, why do they do that? Why is it that there's such a divide between media members and NBA players. It's a very interesting thing, and it's something that I think is worth, is worth looking into, because to me, I think the fact of the matter is this. Listen, Michael Jordan is the GOAT, and I think Kobe Bryant is right there. As I said, I didn't get to see Michael Jordan in his prime. Didn't see it. I saw some of his years with the Washington Wizards, and I know he was an older Jordan. But I saw Kobe. And let me tell you something. I have not seen a better basketball player play basketball. I haven't. I'm sorry. I've seen Kevin Durant. I've seen LeBron James. I've seen Kawhi Leonard. I saw Tim Duncan. I saw Shaq. None of these dudes was better than Kobe. I'm sorry. So those are my opinions. Those are my thoughts. So what I want to know from you guys, what do you think about everything that I said? Whatever you guys think, please leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. Again, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to make sure you go ahead and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to be notified whenever we drop our content. Once again, this is Charles here from Dreamerspro. Wishing you guys an amazing day and catch you guys on the next episode. Peace.